easy on me. And then speaking of me, who am I? My name is Ying Yao. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a senior UX designer at Honeywell. In my off hours, I'm a design mentor here on ADPList and in the Design Buddies community, as well as the co-organizer of Ladies.UX Atlanta, which is an inclusive design space for women, femmes, and non-binary creatives. So what is ADP List? Short for Amazing Design People List. This is a global community for making genuine connections, a platform where people can find, book, and meet mentors from all around the world. And our mission is to foster an inclusive space, support network for designers to come together, learn from each other, and strive to be better. So if you haven't had a chance to check our community out, head over to adplist.org after this event. Let me share a couple community milestones. I like to call this our world domination metrics. So since the ADP List started, we have grown a bunch. We now have over 3,000 mentors on the platform, leading to over 12,000 one-on-one sessions. We've hosted over 100 events tackling a variety of topics. And a lot of those events have been recorded and are available on our YouTube channel. So check that out too. So with our platform touching over 70 countries, we're very proud of the global impact we've had on connecting creatives together. All right, so what to expect for this event? This will be recorded. And for Q&A, we have a handy Pigeonhole link, which we will use in the chat, or which we will paste in the chat. So you can use that to type in your question that you want our speakers to tackle, and then everybody can vote on which ones they want our speakers to answer first. Next is no hate speech or discriminatory behavior, please. I think that's obvious. And as is our tradition, we will take our signature selfie, our family portrait in just a moment. And then finally, please share your takeaways on social media by tagging @ADPList and using the hashtag #AmazingTogether. Okay, I believe Mashope will be pressing the camera button on us. So please, at this time, turn on your cameras, put on your freshest smiles.
Awesome, thank you so much. Everyone, please just have our cameras on. Let's see those smiles. Please do your pose if you want to. I'll quickly walk through the screens and yeah, I can see the nice faces. So screen one, are you ready? Go. Thank you. Okay, I'm moving to the next screen. Screen two, please hold that pose. Thank you. I'll be going to screen three now. And yes, I have that. And I have the fourth screen also now. And thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Mashope. Okay, with our photo taken and perfectly framed on our virtual wall, let's get started. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to introduce our speakers. They will share their portfolio knowledge that has served them personally well. And then the bulk of this event will be them reviewing portfolios live. So how that's going to work is when the time comes, I'll tell you all to drop links to your portfolios in the chat for our speakers to pick and review and share their feedback. So when that time comes, pull up your portfolio site on the side, hit Command-C or Control-C on that URL and get ready to Command-V and paste it into the chat when we get there. And then near the end, we will do a short Q&A and answer your burning questions regarding portfolios. Okay, so for today we have two awesome badass mentors who have joined us to share their advice, their tips, their tricks, their general wisdom with us. We have Seul Lee, who is a senior UX design specialist at Weavik, and Timothy Lee, no relation, who is product designer at The Score. So Seul, Timothy, thanks for joining us. If y'all can unmute yourselves, share a little bit more about who you are, what you're all about, and then I'll hand it to you to kick us off.
Sounds great. Hello, everyone. I'm Seul. I'm a UX designer working at Weavik, and I've been previously working a lot with B2C and B2B kind of companies. I also worked as an independent contractors and then freelancing. I tried to make a studio and I kind of like pushed that one for later. But yeah, so I've been working in an agency environment and that's my main field. And I do ADPList mentoring and with ADPList and then the design buddies as well. Yeah, I think that's about myself.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim, and I'm a product designer at The Score. I've been mentoring with ADPList since I think around like early February. And then in addition to that, I was also a mentor with one of the partners with ADPList called Colab. And so I was a design mentor for for some of the teams there as they were going through their kind of hands-on project a couple of months ago. And then outside of that, I've been in my past, I've been also designing at various smaller startups to larger tech companies, as well as like on a freelance basis. So that's where my experience has been, largely kind of like small to mid-sized companies. And yeah, that's a little bit about my background, and very excited to be talking about portfolios once more today. I've done a couple of times actually with Ying in the past early in the year. So this will be also really, really fun. And I will quickly just share my screen. Cool. Can everybody see? I think we're all good?
Yes.
Okay. So for today, the first about 5 to 10 minutes or so, Sol and I are going to go over some of our portfolio tips. And then, like Ying mentioned earlier, we're going to go into the individual portfolio reviews in a little bit after that. So starting off with kind of my five, kind of like a top 5 portfolio tips this time around. The first tip I would have is what makes you you? And basically that's more kind of like a question to ask yourself. What makes you as a designer unique? What's your unique key value proposition, for example, if you want to think of it from like a more product terms? It's very often that you would see portfolios where the headline would be like, I am a product designer or UX designer, passionate about user-centered experiences that are done elegantly, or whatever it is. But very often they either come off as sounding really cookie cutter, or another person have said something exactly the same and they just grab like a thesaurus and kind of reused a couple words. So really, what as someone who like looks at portfolios, what I would like to know is, it's great that you have basics covered. You should be using a user-centered focus. Like really, if you're not, then you shouldn't be doing design. So what else makes you unique? Is it your particular background from another industry? Did you do design but in a different context before, in a way that you can apply to say like digital design? Are you particularly passionate about a certain area of product design? So you may be a generalist overall, but you are really great at like say like in-app animations or something like that. So what's that unique part about you as a designer? And my second tip is cool process, but why? Very often you would see, or I would see a case study where someone would describe, we did user interviews, we interviewed 6 people and 20 minutes each, and we asked these questions, and then they just move on to the next part of the case study. I wasn't able to understand, how did you decide to need to do user interviews, for example? What were the key takeaways from the user interviews? How did those user interviews bleed into the next portion of your case study, such as like setting up personas, for example? So think very critically about why you're doing certain things and why you include the processes in your case studies. Otherwise, when the time comes during the interviews, you'll get that question, why did you choose to do this? Or is it you just chose it because it was part of a checklist? No, my third one would be save some of the content for the big performance. So usually whenever there's a case study that's way too long, I think the impression I would get is that someone would basically try to include as much as they've learned, as much as they've done as possible. But at the same time, you can think of your case studies as almost kind of like a trailer for a movie. And show enough to get someone interested to learn more, but still to get a good idea of what you're about, and then save a lot of material for your actual interview, so that when you're presenting it, you're not just regurgitating every single thing that you've already written. And it kind of makes the experience a lot more different for someone who's already read your case study and now they're hearing it again. So it's not very compelling experience. 4 is it's not all about case studies. If you do write a blog about design, have you been featured in a blog that's like design focused? Do you do anything else outside of that that's like design adjacent? Like if you've been a guest on a podcast, for example, like anything that is that adds an extra dimension to you as a designer will definitely stand out. And then the last one is for case studies is to bring it full circle. So if you had a case study that takes like 20 minutes to explain in like an interview setting, then near the end, very often the person listening, they might forget what the original problems were that you were trying to solve. So it's a good way to say, after you've gone through the entire process, kind of wrap it up with like, initially when we first started, these are the problems, and then now this is how we've solved them, just to kind of reiterate the problem in the viewer's mind. And that way it'll make it clear to understand what you did from like beginning all the way to the end. So that was a little bit long. I actually did not expect it to be that lengthy, but I will hand it off to Seul.
Yeah, so for me, these are the top 5 that I found. The first one is no one size fits all. Like Timothy said before, like there are so many cookie cutter, portfolios and case studies. So same thing as your resume, you cater towards your company that you want to apply for. So don't try to make all the case study have the template for it and then just fill in the context for. I would say it will be better if you can highlight maybe this one of those case study is better off showcasing the research, or the other one is more for like UI or UX flows or any those kind of things. So it's better to customize it. And because your process is never always the same. And for the second one is like, I don't really have time. So basically what happens is if the case study is too long, I'm getting a lot of questions, people asking like, how long is good enough? And my answer would be the length doesn't really matter, but it should be scannable. So basically when you're reading through your own case study, make sure that people can understand when they scroll down to all the way bottom. People should be able to understand like what you're trying to do, what your skill is, and those kind of scannable items. And then for the third one, this is not a school assignment. Basically, don't try to fill in all the check boxes. It kind of relates to the first point. We know that you learned these kind of, like user journey map or persona, all of those kind of like little deliverables. But because this is not a school assignment, it's more of like what you have actually done, and also like what actually helped you to build those case studies and like actually to solve those problems. So basically, don't try to check off all the boxes and have something that is more, I guess, like put emphasis into one that you want to really talk about. And for the fourth one, it's basically, you got to do UX and yours too. So your portfolio is showcase of your UX projects, but at the same time, your portfolio is also another project for the people who is actually reading your portfolio. So think about who is the reader, and also maybe it's a good idea to actually do, the design process while you're creating your own portfolio. And then number 5, the last one is, why are you so scared to actually share I know a lot of people, especially as we move off the letter, a lot of times people don't actually iterate on their portfolio. And also people don't really want to show the portfolio if they think it's not ready. But the thing is, you will never be ready because, you know, every single time you learn more and you want to showcase what you have learned more. So it can't be always ready. It will be always in progress. So don't be too scared to share your work early on and get some feedback and then work out from there. And so these are my top 5 that I talk a lot with the mentees these days.
Thank you so much. And guys, I hope y'all screenshotted both of their tips. They're really valuable to keep on hand to remind you as you are working on your own portfolios. And with that, it is time. So if you would like for Seul and Timothy to review your portfolio, now is the time. Drop them in the chat. Bonus points if they're clickable, if it's like a clickable link. And then yeah, it's up to the fate of our speakers now to choose.
Cool. Is it okay if I just pick one at random? I don't think there's like a particular.
Yes, I think it's
criteria.
whatever. I think random is most fair.
Okay. All right. It is moving really fast, so I'm gonna
Big
try
lottery,
to.
yes.
1 second. So we got
Now
Kelly
I'll
here.
set like a rough timer to spend like 10 minutes max on each one, so we can try to get as much as we can until the end.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So we've got Kelly here. Can everybody see it? Cool.
Yep.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I think first impression, there's a kind of a little bit more of a playful approach to it, and the fact that there's a little bit of like animation showing like the different hats. It gives out like the idea that you're a designer that can wear many hats, I'm assuming. So a little bit more kind of like a generalist, obviously without reading the description underneath. So actually I really like kind of like that first impression. I really like where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think the part about creating learning experiences in the classroom is really interesting, just because you've come from like a background of teaching, your background of basically communicating to people from, I'm assuming, like different backgrounds. And I think that really translates well into like design or user experience design. So I can kind of see that connection right away. Yeah, that was my first impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My first feeling was also the same. Like my eye went to the animation and I kind of understand what that meant. So like wearing many hats, I know a lot of people try to just write it out as like, I'm a multidisciplinary, designer, but like this is a really good shortcut way of making the reader understand about what you do. And also, I don't know if, like I find this very interesting, but I see the email highlighted there. I actually wonder why, but at the same time, it's kind of very interesting, I think. I guess like another thing here is empathize with users. Generally, the way how I look at the portfolio, I skim through it. So I don't read the fine print, but more of a bolded or colored and those kind of things. So for me, I would put little more of not generic kind of a words here. I would rather think about highlight on what you actually have, like creating the learning experiences in the classroom. Like I think that is more interesting than empathize with users. So I guess my personal opinion there.
Cool. And the one thing I also wanted to point out is at first reaction was that I thought it was more kind of like a landing page that was maybe a little bit in progress and there's more to come later, just because I didn't get I didn't get much of an indicator that there's more further down the page until I actually looked a little bit more closely, I noticed that there's like an indicator of like work down here. So maybe something to think about is giving more indication that there's more underneath. Otherwise, especially seeing the email, I would assume that this is more like, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how to get in touch. And then that was pretty much it. Especially with the like the social links, or sorry, Medium and LinkedIn and Instagram, it would give up the impression that this is almost kind of like a footer, more than the fact that there's actually more. So
Yeah.
I'll continue. Oh, okay, I'll continue going down, and there are a couple projects here. So any thoughts on this kind of at first glance?
Well, I like the fact that it has a little playfulness onto the images here. I think this is a general thing that I always say, but I do want to know these are clickable in the beginning. So generally, because it doesn't have any, yeah, it does have cover action in there. So I guess like if I am just watching from the on the other side, I think I wouldn't really click on it in the first get-go. And another thing is, I think having these little snapshot, would you say, of those detail, I really like that, that I don't have to actually go in to see like what are those. And it is very interesting to say like a new feature that powers DoorDash group deliveries. I wonder what they are. So I guess like it doesn't give away the entire thing. So I like that part.
I'd like to point out something mentioned, mentioned just now about not sure if they're like interactive or not. I noticed that you do have hover states, which pertains primarily for desktop. So I think it would be a good assumption that there may be those that are looking on mobile and like the hover state wouldn't really work. So just as whenever you're creating any hover, like anything that's desktop centric or mobile centric, just keep in mind that the other side won't be able to see it. And the other thing that in terms of for the overall the layout of these case studies here is I would like to know a couple of things. Kind of ties back to, I think, a point mentioned earlier in the tips is that like time is a luxury. So if you are, if someone comes to your page and they only have time, they only have like 5 minutes, how do they make a decision on what to look at? Do you want them to look at a case study of yours that shows the breadth of your skills, or do you want them to see a case study that pertains to how much time they have? So if it's like a 5 minutes, then like the shortest case study that you have. One of the folks I mentored through ADPList actually a while back mentioned that they had put in analytics on their website and found that on average it was, I think, 5 minutes that people were spending on their site. So that gave them a good indicator that really I only have so much time. I want them to see this. How can I make that decision easier? So whether it's indicating like this project is something that is launched publicly, or this case study is a really short read, or this case study is an ongoing piece at a company that you're working at, like find ways to make every project, I guess not unique, but give them enough identifiers so that a visitor can make a good decision on what they want to read.
I think that kind of links back to the UX on your own portfolio too. Because like if you know the reader, you know that people don't really have much time, and generally people are not good at choosing if there's too many choices, or if they look quite similar, then it gets too hard to make a decision. So
yeah, it's like a paradox of choice almost. The more that you have, the more it is tougher to make a decision. And the worst thing not the worst thing, but a bad thing that can happen is someone goes into one case study assuming it's one thing, realizing partway down the page that it is either too long or not what they're really looking for, and then having to go back and pretty much just wasted however many minutes, and having to pick another one and restart the whole process. And there was a comment. Oh, sorry. There was a comment about adding in estimated read time. I think that's something interesting that you can experiment, as long as it's like relatively accurate. If it ends up being all like really similar, then it might kind of work against you. So I would take a look at your case studies, see if they kind of vary in read time, and which would make it a good reason to include it. If they're all the same, then that kind of reiterates like another issue of like, how do I choose now if they're all equally like 30 minutes long? So it kind of depends on the content of your work.
And also, I
did. We have about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah,
we can jump into one. Cool. I just quickly pick. I'll take the DoorDash one, just because I'm a frequent user of DoorDash. Okay. I'll let cover the next part. I can jump in first if okay, cool. So I think what I would like to know here is this a project as part of like a capstone for a boot camp or your school program, or is it a project that you did on your own? I'm not getting enough context because I'm assuming that maybe you don't work at DoorDash directly. I'm not too sure. So if you can clarify kind of like the context of how this came to be, that'd be really helpful. And if it is in the event that this is a group project that you did with others, clarifying like if you did a bit of everything, which part are you responsible for the most, so that your group partners, when they're presenting a similar case study, they don't kind of step over each other's toes and all saying you all did everything, because that's probably not likely the case. So clarifying the context a little bit more is what I would focus on here in the intro at the top.
I think generally on the introduction or overview of these timeline role tools, not quite, but like these kind of like snapshots are good, but it needs to have a good details in there. And I also, another thing that I always find is sometimes when people are writing about the introduction or overview, it's not quite overview, it's more of a what do you call it, like in the story you're just starting to making a story like started. So if you want to say the introduction here and move on from here, like I would try to make this I guess a little bit more about the project itself, because I don't see. Can you scroll up a tiny bit?
Sure.
We're wrapping up. So if you can share your last piece of feedback.
You wanna like kind of scroll through like the entire thing, like slowly maybe. I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I think I have like a final thought on this as well. Another thing that could be really great is when you're setting up the problem. I'd be interested to know how do you decide on this problem out of the many different problems that might exist. Is there a particular stat that you found? Is there like some sort of research that was done that kind of led to this problem? And then if you can personalize the problem, like instead of saying like these two people, right, like a group of friends, like Jane and Tom or something like that, were like trying to decide what to order, like just give more of a personality to the problem will give it a little bit more interest when reading.
I think the one thing that I can final thought, I think I will answer the questions on the comment there. The role, yes, it does tell a bit about the what you have done, but it doesn't really tell about what specifically you have done. So basically the role says UX UI designer and researcher, which means as a UX designer, you generally do all of it. And also by saying researcher, you're kind of duplicated there. So maybe I'm assuming that you're more focused on research. So I guess better than, I would say it's better to write out like what you have done than saying just roles on it.
Okay.
Excellent.
Cool. Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing your portfolio for our speakers to take a look at. I hope that was helpful. Okay, let's move on. Now's the time. Everybody,
right.
drop your links in the chat again for them to pick for the next one.
Okay, I will quickly click. Oh my God, this is
Go,
moving
go.
fast.
It's so fast.
All right, next one. I think it's pronounced Naimi. I apologize
Naimi?
for messing up the names.
Amy?
Cool. All right. So something right away caught my interest. What is spatial design? I think like to me, my first impression is that product design, UX, UI design are kind of interchangeable terms, to be fully honest. But I would like to know what is spatial design, especially from like in an industry where a lot of folks may not understand what like other design practices. It would be great to see to understand what like unique like aspect does spatial design bring to your portfolio. The other thing that I'm curious about right away is dimension of architecture at the top. And yeah, that was like the next thing that I saw. And part of me thinks, is this an individual currently maybe like transitioning from architecture to UX UI, or are they trying to do both? What is the thinking behind it?
Yeah, I think I kind of saw the same thing, and I kind of related the spatial design with the architecture, and I was like kind of thinking as like a space design, you know. I think there is a lot of questions from the beginning when I'm trying to get to know about this person at the first sight. So I think it would be very good to have a very brief kind of an overview about yourself in here, because there is a terms that we don't really use or people don't know from the get-go. So I guess that might be the first thing.
And then another thing that also caught my attention a little bit is the choice of typography. I might be wrong, but I think I see maybe 3 different types of fonts in here used, and I'd be interested to see like how that kind of carries over into the rest of the portfolio. And one of the things that especially is important for junior designers is your design foundations. So and typography is a huge part of that. So if I start noticing kind of like throughout a portfolio kind of like inconsistencies like that, or just maybe like trying too many things, I would start to kind of question like how well are their foundational skills.
I think that relates to the spacing as well. I guess because it's less content, that it feels like everything is on the top and the below is like kind of empty. But it's a kind of another layout kind of thing. Same thing with, you know, typography.
Cool. I will continue down the page. So the 5 dots indicate there's probably like 5 sections. So this page is probably relatively long, I'm guessing. So first one. Okay, so we got 2 projects here. One is a UX UI design of an end-to-end mobile app for self-financial management. And then another one is a responsive e-commerce website. So I think both are like very clear as to what they are describing. But similar to the previous project, consider if someone's on a mobile device, how this would scale, especially with the images of multiple devices kind of side by side. And then also, do I know is one a kind of like a course project is one part of like a hackathon, I would love to know a little bit more so that it's easier to know what to decide to look at.
And also, I would be a little, I don't know if it is just my screen, but like I find this very, very tiny. So I guess like think about the font size there too. Same thing with the previous one, the mobile experience about this clicking and yeah.
And there's one kind of like a small thing. So the use of the devices on this second project has kind of like shadows underneath, indicating a little bit more depth. But the ones up here don't do that. So these are just kind of like little details to consider as you are going through your work or presenting your work. I mean. Okay, so there are a couple more. So this is Starbucks, which immediately caught my attention as well.
Same.
And then another one is an insurance company website. So yeah, I think similar comments as to the first two cases.
I have a new
yeah.
one.
Sure.
So on the side, we have the 5 dots there. I just realized it's not aligning with how it flows. So basically, I think it is the first one is the first landing part, and then the 4 is the case studies, but it doesn't follow through. It actually hits the
kind of.
yeah. So I'm kind of like saying like, okay, like maybe adjust the spacing a bit so that the if you want to have that, I don't know what you call it, slider, then
yeah, it's like kind of like a progress indicator almost.
Just like match it a little bit. Yeah.
And then now that I got to the bottom, I don't know if this applies to any other pages, but at least on the home page, now I'm kind of seeing almost double of like what's in the nav bar and the footer. So I would say if you have different things to show in the footer, whether just focus it on the LinkedIn and the resume, I think that would be a better use of the space versus repeating similar links. I'm guessing these are links.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Quickly jump into, so do you want to pick a project?
Let's go with the Starbucks because I use it a lot.
Okay. All right. So
right.
yeah, similar pattern to the home page with the indicators. So, and then it kind of changes depending on the page, but in a similar style, which I like. And it's an app feature. What does testing mean in this case? Like, is it like a user testing part is a big part of this? I think just that using testing in isolation seems a little, I wasn't too certain what it meant. So yeah, this kind of like row almost is like, here's what I did, here's what it is, and then here are the tools that I use. I wasn't quite understanding, like, is this a list of skills? Is it just a summary? Is it, I'm not quite sure what this row is trying to say.
I picked the same thing, like case study, like, and also the testing. I did not get both of those. I guess like generally these part, I find it's more of understanding about like, timeline role, like we said before, the one that we saw before, like those kind of thing. It needs to have a context, unless it's gonna say it as is, if it is there.
I think what could be really great is kind of illustrating like what you had on the homepage. Like you almost like reiterate that short sentence versus something like this. Okay, so now we're on to the project overview. And we've got the challenge, solution, objectives, specs, which is more kind of like a summary. Okay. Cool. So now it is clear that it's a case study as part of design lab. Project duration. So all of that is really good. I think some of these details you can bring out to the homepage to add a little bit more context for to the viewer.
Choices. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing. All the key thing is all in here. So I think this is a very good overview here. And I do also see the view prototype down there. So I think this is very good for people who don't have time but want to know the entire project in a kind of few seconds. I think this would be a good example.
Mhm. And one thing that I was thinking about the navigation dots on the right, if you can even include, like, if they're for like specific section titles, like project overview, next one might be like research or whatever it is. If someone can maybe almost like hover over them and understand, like, oh, hey, this step is final design. And if I'm looking at someone's quality of like visual design, I might just jump directly to that just to get a quick idea. So if you're using anything like this where they're almost kind of like, are they anchor links? Yeah, they are. So yeah, if they're like anchor links, I would like to know what I'm jumping to. I think that will make it that's a nice addition to this page.
I agree.
Ying, how are we doing on time?
You are right at 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I apologize for not having the time to go over the entire thing. So maybe the next, the final case study will go directly into a case study of this page without starting on the homepage, just so that we can give a bit of variety to
Let's do
this.
that. Thank you, Naini, for sharing your portfolio link with us to review. I hope that was helpful. Okay, guys. All right, Chad's already got it. Here are plenty of options
All right,
for you to choose from.
randomly trying to click. Okay. Okay, so we have Kate here.
Can I say something?
Go for it.
It's the same template, right? Like from our first one, right? I guess like these kind of things stand out quite a lot. It's okay to use the templated, thing, but like make sure to make a what do you call it? Some kind of a variation onto it so that it doesn't look like, actual template.
Yeah, what are the chances?
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So that template aside, and it's definitely not a knock on templates. Like a lot of the times, if you're not experienced with coding, or you don't have the time to do it, like there's no issue with using templates as long as you can make it you can modify it a bit to make it feel unique to yourself. And I think so. We'll just go straight into one of the projects. So we got a couple here. So there's one that's in mobile app, one's a web app, another is a watch and a responsive web. So yeah, like the watch actually got my interest right away just because it's not something commonly done amongst designers. And the fact that you've shown your work to be a little bit more like multimodal, you've done web, you've done web apps, you've done like mobile app, and you've also like attempted at designing for like watch apps. I think that's gives more variety gives more variety to your work. Okay, so it's a rover app for smartwatch, and right, so it's a 2-week project. It's a hypothetical one. Design a rover app for smartwatches to make it easier for dog walkers. So it's not for, so it's for trying to remember what rover does.
It's a dog sitting or dog walking app.
Okay, so it's for kind of their employees in a way, right? Because it would be for their dog walker. So kind of like an Uber driver or delivery person in a way.
Yeah.
So it's not for their direct users, more for the people that work for/with them. Cool. I think that's actually an interesting aspect. The fact that it's not your end user, it's kind of not, I guess it can count as internal. Okay.
I've like one thing I find from here is actually the way how the column kind of layout here. I see all the titles for all of those, like the bottom two. I'm trying to figure out, is it with the about rover or the
Yeah, I believe it is all the way across.
yeah. I think this is a little bit more of a one way of kind of figuring out the layout issues here. But because on the top of the client, it talks about the app. So that's why I was kind of a little bit confused about the starting point is the app allows to. So I was like, okay.
And
Yeah.
I would like to know initially how you uncovered that there's a need for the dog walkers to track their visits. Was there, yeah, like I mentioned on the previous portfolio, is there like a piece of research? Is there stats that you found about dog walkers? Like how did this idea kind of get started? And then the one thing is, especially if you have long, not this one isn't too long, but if your case study has relatively lengthy paragraphs, find ways to emphasize certain lines. So like Sil mentioned earlier, make sure it's skimmable. So what are the key sentences that needs to be read if someone is purely skimming?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
So here is, I'm expecting that this project will be relatively text heavy. So there.
Yeah, I would say definitely it needs to be if it has some kind of scannable things, that would be the best because it has a lot of text on it. And also okay.
Yeah, it's kind of ties back to like what I mentioned in one of the tips. Don't feel like you have to communicate like 100% of everything. Communicate like what's interesting that communicates the project very clearly. So and then a lot of the stuff like like smartwatch apps usability, for example, you can talk about it when you're like in the when you're in the interview and you're explaining it, and you have a little bit more material for yourself to talk about that's not already revealed. And you were kind of on the right track here with the numbered list. Kind of like explore more in that direction of like using lists to clarify points, use visuals to clarify anything that you've discovered, whether if it's like certain numbers or like certain facts and things like that. So there are many different ways to communicate kind of like that research side.
And also like I would more prefer to see the title of this section as more of an insight or just something that you want to highlight rather than research, because like the first time I see the research word, like I do find, okay, this will follow through research, design, idea, prototype, it will go through the checkboxes. So maybe put some your own personality into it, then I think it'll be better.
Okay. So when I see a competitive analysis report, I'm almost in a way indirectly expecting like a dissertation or something.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes me be wary about clicking onto something that has more reading. So I would probably skip that.
Checking in, we have like, we can do like 1 more minute on this before we swap over to Q&A.
No problem. Cool. Let's quickly kind of skim through it, and so feel free to just like stop me if you have anything that you want to mention.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like previously it said like when I see the research title, I will expect to see all the content, right? And I am seeing all the content. So this is the one of the part, like I would say, like you don't have to include every single thing. This is not a school assignment. So basically, I like this part though. Basically, I'm seeing your insights in the research phase. Like the most interesting part is the insight. And also the another thing is down here, you have opportunity down there too. So basically how this link to the design, I guess that will be the most interesting part. So highlight those and then have those one. And then the other stuff can just be more subtle.
I really like how you've actually like kind of differentiated the sources of these insights with like these individual tiles. I think this is really good. Something that kind of adds like more visual interest to this section. Cool. And the rest are, I think we're low on time. But whenever I guess my last point would be if you're presenting kind of like a little bit like a journey map like this, think about, am I showing it for the sake of showing it? Am I showing it so that someone has to read it? I would love to know like, why are you showing me this? And what do I need to kind of get out of this? If it's relatively big at a somewhat legible size, I might start to read it, but maybe I don't need to if you have another way to summarize it. But if it's like really small, then maybe the impression I would get is like, hey, I just want to communicate the fact that I did this. And then here are a couple of summarized points coming out of this activity, for example. So just here, I'm kind of like at an in-between. So I don't quite know if I want to read through the entire thing, which kind of adds to like more time spent. And so this is kind of like somewhere where I'm not quite sure what to do. Yeah. Okay. I think that about wraps it up for this one.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your portfolio, Kate. All right, it's time to move on to the Q&A. I think we'll have time for a couple here. So I'm looking at our Pigeonhole link and picking from most voted ones. Okay, so this one is from Maha. They had asked, what are must-haves you would want to see on a case study? For example, do we need experience maps? And this is coming from a confused graphic design student. So like your expectations of what key pieces of content you would expect to see.
I think I'll start here. I think this question is asking for what kind of things do I need to have as a checklist, basically. So what I would say is there isn't really must-haves, I would say. It's more of what you want to show. So it's up to you to actually showing, am I going to be showing like I can do these kind of things? Basically, that means like I will need to include experience map, persona, and those kind of things. Or is it something more like I can go a little more deeper and then take out more of an insight or like key points from the activities that I can do. So like, I think this is more of what is your main focus to communicate to the reader.
Yeah, like to build on that, like what is your main focus? So I think to me, it is a combination of what kind of places you're applying to, as well as a combination of what your skill set is and what your strengths are. So if you're applying to like larger organizations where there's a need to understand the breadth of skills and tools and how to use them, then do that and show how you've applied them. But if you're more interested in the more, I guess, like front end or visual or interaction side of things, and wherever you want to apply to, it's not as regular part of their skill set, maybe it's something that you can leave out and you can mention, or maybe mention it briefly. So it's kind of finding a good middle ground between what you're great at and demonstrating that, and then also like where you're applying to and what is most and what they would care about. And what actually I would love to see is it doesn't happen a lot, but I would love to see any case studies of projects that you've done where it kind of starts at a midway point so that you have a context of where maybe a bunch of things went wrong. It didn't start off on the right foot. You started designing something, or another team started designing something, and then you picked it up. Turns out all the insights are wrong, and you have to go backwards. I would love to see, like in real life, a lot of scenarios are you're kind of like in the middle of a project or middle of a life cycle, and you're like iterating upon it, and it never really always starts from like discovery. And like having designed for like 6 years, I can count like less than like maybe like a handful of times where like projects went from like the entire scope, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's one of the way we say, your process is never the linear,
Yeah,
So,
half the time it goes sideways,
mhm.
Nice.
and the rest of it goes backwards and forwards.
So key things there is consider the type of company or team or industry or space that you are applying for to tailor your case study to
Mhm.
that, as well as pick the pieces of content that would communicate your case study in the clearest way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you go through all of the checklists to include it in
Mhm.
there. It's totally okay to like not include certain sections, especially with the time that people will spend on a particular case study to read it. Okay. Thank you for that. Next one. Let's see. What do you think about removing certain deliverables from the case study, including everything that might make the case study way too lengthy? Okay, so it's like the opposite.
Answer is
Like,
yes.
what deliverables would you consider removing?
Anything that does not contribute to a next step in your project, like if it didn't add value, don't mention it.
All right, I think that one's like
Yeah.
similar enough that we can
Yeah.
move on to the next one with that one. Okay, next one. What do you think about adding a final design prototyping link to Figma? I've seen this in some portfolios. Do recruiters, will they even want to look at it?
As not someone in a recruiter title capacity, as someone not in that, I would love to like look at prototypes as that kind of communicates another unique set of skills and also like a more interactive way of going through your work. So if it adds more to your case study, then yes. If it doesn't add much, then maybe don't bother. So as long as it's like well done.
Sure, and you need to make sure that having a prototype link means it has a, what do you call this, like a double-edged sword. Like when people are actually watching the prototype and then realize, okay, this is not work as I expected, or it could actually turn the person down. So basically, make sure if you're going to be adding your prototype link, then make sure that it is really good and it makes sense. And it links to what you have been actually saying in the case study.
Yes, I want to add to this too, because I've also seen that where like my preference would actually be like least preferable is like if you link outside of the case study, like to an external link, do not like that. See if you can embed the prototype link in your case study, but with the caveat that it's clear of how to interact with it, right? Because it's like, I don't know what the flow I'm going through. I don't know what I'm supposed to click. What I actually like seeing is a looping GIF of you interacting with the prototype. So it's like, oh, here's a login flow, or here's creating a calendar event flow. So I can like see you and I can see the prototype you designed and how you interact with it all in one go. I think that would probably be the best way to show it in a short amount of time.
We've actually used, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've actually also used like MP4s instead of GIFs in terms of like saving file sizes. And actually it's been working out really well recently on the landing page. So yeah, that's another option.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, if you're going to be adding GIFs, then definitely make sure to add the context for it. Because like I'm not the one who is making the flow and interacting with. So the reader needs to know about what is this about, not just the final prototype.
Or the GIF with the context needed, or you can do a video walkthrough. You can say you can guide them through what you're doing. It's like annotated. Okay, and then I think there was like a question: how fast or slow or short or long should the GIF be? I feel like 10 seconds max. Like you don't want it to be going on forever.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a hard question to ask. Like, what is it showing off? Is it showing off a specific interaction? Is it showing off like entire flow? It's kind of hard to put a number on it, but thinking that if it goes on for too long, then like you said, like how long will it go for? Like you don't really know.
Yeah. So if you do,
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I was gonna say if it is also looping, then definitely, because I am not able to move around the section. So like if it is too long, then it will be very difficult.
Yeah. So experiment with it. There's no like right or wrong answer here. Experiment, put it in front of somebody, see what their feedback is of like, oh, I don't like the GIF, or like, oh, I like the interacting with it better. And then once you start seeing multiple people saying similar things, that gives you that research to then like go in one direction or the other. But like treat your portfolio as like as a testing ground that you can validate with people and then like optimize from there. Okay, with that, we're at the end of our event. I want us to go crazy in the chat, say thank you to our speakers for taking the time to share their wisdom with us. We tried to get as much in as we can with reviewing portfolios and going over these questions. And that's why this is a continuing series that we do regularly. So we'll have another opportunity for you all to join us again, share your questions and your portfolio links for speakers to give their feedback on. And I think we've dropped, if you want to connect with Timothy and Seul on ADPList as mentors or on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, I'm sure that is available in the internet space for you to find them on.
What's LinkedIn?
Well, the funny thing is that we should actually be saying what was Facebook or Instagram, since it was down for like 6 hours. So LinkedIn, I'm sure, got a huge surge, and so did Twitter.
Probably.
Okay, with that, thank you everybody for coming. Please join us again next time. This is the outro. Have a lovely, awesome rest of your day. Be happy, be safe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us. And then our speakers will hang around and do a little huddle, post-event huddle.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
I had like so many